Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. Today in studio, I have Dr. Richard Raubolt, author of what is soon to be 5 books, producer of many short films, as well as countless peer-reviewed papers, articles, and a whole list of accomplishments that would make most human beings jealous. Richard, it's awesome to have you. If you care to talk to me or talk to the camera, whatever you're comfortable with, tell the world who you are and what your background is, and we can get started.
Okay. Thanks, Mike, for the introduction. I'm a clinical psychologist and have been so for, at least according to my wife, the last 49 years. I've been in private practice almost that long. I've been in Grand Rapids from New York, which was quite of a change for me. Nonetheless, I've adapted and enjoyed my practice here. I've had a specialty in trauma over the years and continue with that. I enjoy writing and continue with that as well. I have a number of interesting ideas, I think, and they've seen the way into print, which has pleased me, gives me something to do, keeps me off the streets, and away from retiring, at least at this point.
Well, retirement is one of the things that we will certainly touch on. I think it's something on everybody's mind at some point in their lives. But before we get into that, I always like to start with an icebreaker when I have guests that are my age or older, which I think you do qualify for that.
Yes. I'm a member of that club. So
You are. Congratulations. My icebreaker is this, and I ask every guest pretty much this. Do you remember your first experience with the internet, and what were your impressions at that time?
I really don't remember it very clearly at all. I think my eyes glazed over when it was described to me what the internet was and what computers were. I know the first one we purchased on the advice of a friend was something that was homemade. And if it was difficult to learn on a reputable machine, doing this on a jerry-rigged setup was even more difficult. And dial-up, we could have a meal while we were waiting for dial-up, and it still would not kick in any clear way. So initially, my experiences were frustrating. Now I understand more about computers, and I'm still equally as frustrated. So that's how you've been so much help to me.
Well, I appreciate the kind words. And yeah, as somebody who became a professional, became an adult before the internet was ever even anyone's dream, I'm always interested to get people's experience as technology evolves. And we're in the middle of a technological revolution right now with AI and VR and cryptocurrencies and all of the things that are coming down the pipeline. What's your perspective on AI and how it pertains to psychotherapy?
Well, I think potentially it can be a real effective tool if it's used in the right way. I think if it's used as a way of collecting information and presenting it fully, like medical reports or psychological evaluations, I think it's positive. To go on the internet and seek psychotherapy via AI, I think is problematic because there's a positive factor built into that. The more you talk to AI, at least as I understand it, the more positive responses you get. So they're encouraging you along a certain way, which if you have in mind what you see as the problem, for example, AI can confirm that, which may or may not be accurate. In terms of research and writing, I find it very, very helpful because it pulls together information that would take me a long time to collate other ways. Now you always have to check that information, but I just find it saves time and then with that information, I can put it into my own words. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people, particularly students, don't do the individual part. They just take it whole cloth and try and present it as their own. That's a problem.
Yeah, that is a problem. And from an academic standpoint, it's hard for me to comment on that because that's not really my world. It was kind of segues into my experience at your book reading. It was, I felt like a fish out of water a little bit. I was kind of there with Levon, and it was definitely an interesting experience though. And Dr. Klott, I believe her name is, sharing her experiences, via the book and via the reading. Right. It was very heavy subject matter. Right. But going back to AI, do you have any inklings as to the direction it's going to go in terms of psychotherapy, in the sense that it's not going away and it's going to be leveraged, and there's always going to be abuse just like there was with the internet, but eventually it kind of sorted itself out and the technology evolved to where it was harder to use it in a negative way. And I think the same thing is going to happen with AI, because right now it's kind of like the Wild West. It's a prompt and you kind of get out of it what you put into it. But I think that's eventually going to be streamlined. But do you see it going in a direction with like avatars, like you could be talking to like an avatar as an AI and have that be effective therapy?
God, I hope not.
Really?
Yeah, I hope not, because that will take the personal, the very vital, I think, personal aspect of therapy and turn it on its head. I think, relationships are what therapy is all about. And what happens in the room is that there are the conflicts that exist out there in the outside world get brought into the room and you can work with it. I don't know how effective it's going to be developing a personal relationship with an avatar. You might get basic information, but you won't get the experiential component, which I think leads to change and is so necessary.
So could you see a hybrid type of setup where, because one of the nice things about AI is it's available 24/7, right, where your therapist, you see them for that 1 hour a week that you have scheduled. Right. Could you see a coexistence where a person can potentially do the work on themselves independently of their therapy sessions and then come and see their therapist for that human element?
Perhaps, but I think it gets awfully complicated. It's like having three people in the room. And since psychotherapy is more an art than a science, my concern would be that it'd be too easy to have two competing voices, one emphasizing one particular aspect or direction and the other a different one that may not coexist well together. But I also think that AI may be useful in developing certain programs. For example, if somebody is trying to lose weight and they need to have a particular program developed for them, then I think AI, putting all that information in, coming up with a program may be helpful. I don't see that as therapy per se as much as homework. And can it be useful? Yeah, I think so. As therapy, I have my doubts.
Well, I can tell you from personal experience that I've learned a lot about myself working with ChatGPT, and I just ask it questions, and I'll prompt it to ask me 10 questions one at a time, one leading to the next. And I've learned quite a few things just about how my mind works.
Yeah, and I think that a good therapist would pick that up fairly soon and engage with you over that, because it's likely to show up, that proclivity is likely to show up in other areas. And if it shows up in a therapy room, then it's, I think, more effective to deal with it because it's here and now.
Yeah, I can certainly see where you would say that. And as a person who grew up with technology and leveraged technology to make a living, quite frankly, I'm all for it. I'm all for whatever reduces friction in really any arena. And I think, especially in psychotherapy, because I'm glad to hear you say that it's more of an art than a science, because I feel the exact same way about it. And there are people that are better at it than others. Right. And as we've discussed off camera many times. And so, in your experience, what makes for effective psychotherapy?
I think therapy, at least the therapy that I practice, and that I believe it's effective, deals with two elements. It's the trailing edge and the leading edge. The trailing edge has to do with all of those problems that are unresolved. It's our past. It's the traumas. It's the conflict. It's the unresolved issues that we carry with us, and despite our best efforts, we can't shake. It interferes with our life. Juxtaposed to that is the leading edge. What are our resources? What are our abilities, ambitions? What do we carry with us that will sustain us and actualize the dreams that we have? So we've got the past, we've got the future. Therapy itself, the actual practice of it, has to do with the present. I've talked a number of times already today about the relationship. Well, in the center there, in the present, these two forces come together. And do we focus on what happened in the past? Do we focus on what happened, what the person wants going forward into the future? And the therapy itself helps steer that, address the conflicts that come in, as well as the hopes for the future.
So, with your approach, when a person comes to you, there's a triage phase, like in the very beginning. What metrics and what boxes have to be checked for you to determine if you're the right therapist to help that person?
When I first meet with someone, I tell them that this is a collaborative effort, and it is not something that I'm necessarily going to be in charge of, but rather it's going to be like dancing. Initially, we have to figure out what the pace is, what the rhythm is, what we're dancing to, and in that process, or in the process of discovering that, I'll know, the person will know as well, are we clicking? Is what I'm offering match up with what the person is wanting? Are the specific conflicts that I'm not addressing that they want to address? So right from the start, I encourage them to speak to me about how they are experiencing me. I will usually say, I really appreciate positive feedback and compliments. However, they're not nearly as useful to me as someone who's being critical, if I can work with that in a positive sense. If it's just dismissal, disdain, I can't deal with that. But if there is some mixed collaboration, in other words, if I'm off on some things, even though I'm trying, if a person feels like the effort is there, but we're not connecting, those are very important issues for me to know about.
So when you say it's a collaborative relationship, that resonates with me, because one of the first things I always say to clients when I take them on is that we have to work together. Do you find yourself having to manage expectations?
Yes. If someone comes to me and within the first session refers to me as a trauma expert, I'm in trouble. Because there is an expectation already formed about who I am, the direction that therapy is going to go, and a positive outcome, all of which are uncertain at the beginning. So I think that the basic issue is to talk about what therapy can do and can't do, and what the person can expect of me and what I expect of them. That kind of clarity reduces some of the unrealistic expectations. It can still happen, but not to the same degree.
What are some of the unrealistic expectations that you encounter?
The problems, let's say with trauma, that trauma will go away. It just that it will never be an issue again once addressed effectively. Well, that's not the way trauma works. There's always a residual there, and the past can't be undone. Traumas can't be undone. They can be integrated. They can be worked with in an effective way, and they can be changed so that one of the goals would be that the experience of trauma would be reduced so that it gets activated at certain times in extraordinary situations, and some echoes of the past surface around a traumatic situation, but it doesn't cut as deeply or last as long.
So it's really a function of reducing the blunt effect or blunting the effect pre-therapy is really, that's a lot of times that's the goal, is to blunt the effect or the, am I not saying that? I don't think I'm saying that the way I want to, because like the trauma is still there, right? It just doesn't have as strong as an effect, and people are equipped to deal with it and recognize it in real time.
Right. It's not a blunting, though, because blunting would suggest that something is being blocked, as opposed to it's not there. It's moving through something so that the different layers, the intensity is turned down, the heat is turned down, so to speak, not because you're focused directly on it, but as in the process of talking about all the issues that surround it, how it developed, what the feelings were, the cost of it personally, relationally, those kinds of issues have to do with really talking something through so that the trauma begins to diminish, or the memory of trauma is, it's less intense. As one focuses on understanding and expressing feelings, it goes down in dramatic ways, but there's always, as I say, that residual that hangs in there.
I talked to Levon, Dr. Levon Shafsma. I talked to Levon on the podcast about therapy and therapists in therapy, and she disclosed that she has been in treatment throughout her entire career. What's your perspective on therapists, seeing therapists?
I think it's necessary. I think every therapist should be in therapy, either as part of their training, but also on an ongoing basis, be it intermittently or be it long-term. Who we are is the major tool that we use in therapy. And if we have issues that are interfering with our ability to tolerate certain emotions, if we have certain issues going on in our lives that pull our attention away from certain sensitivities that we need to be able to operate effectively, or if we have certain values that are really at odds to the point that we can't keep our feelings to ourselves, then that's a problem. Those kinds of issues can be dealt with in therapy. I also think it's a humbling experience to be in therapy, and that is a good reminder for therapists that it's the empathy that patients go through that even more extensively because they don't have knowledge of the process.
That's very interesting because if you think about it, a oncologist that's never had cancer can't really truly know what their patients are going through. That's a very interesting perspective. Thank you for sharing.
Well, it's the medical profession is protected, and protected in the sense that there's patient after patient after patient. There's a whole system that is set up, and it is an in and out process. There's a problem and you fix it. Whereas with therapy, is what someone comes into the room with is not necessarily going to be the focus of treatment.
When you're seeing patient after patient after patient, and it's one set of feelings, emotions, stories. Everybody's got their own story, and really, everything is kind of siloed, right? When you're seeing patients back to back to back throughout the course of a day, the word is compartmentalization, right? You've got to compartmentalize all of those and kind of reset. But if you've only got 5 or 10 minutes between sessions, how do you push the reset button to where you're effectively engaged, especially after an emotional session? If you've got a patient that you've seen for several years, you've built a relationship, you know their life, you become emotionally invested in that one can only assume that that's how that transpires. So when you're seeing patients back to back on a daily basis, how do you navigate that?
Well, I try and use the breaks judiciously. That might be, a walk around the house. It may be a quick phone call, maybe listening to music, maybe lifting weights, depending on the situation. 10 minutes is not a long period of time between appointments. And sometimes you're right, if there's a particularly trying situation, it takes me a moment to regroup. People that I've seen for some time will frequently pick that up and may even say, "Do you need a minute?" And that frequently I'll agree to take because it's good for me and it's helpful for the person. That's that extension of empathy. I know some therapists that work on 45-minute sessions, so they go, there's no break. And I don't know how that's done. But as I get older, I adjust my schedule as well and try and get difficult people not all back to back to back. And difficult for me are people who don't talk. So,
but when you say difficult, they don't talk. What motivates that? What motivates them to show up and give short answers or just not talk at all, like you just described?
It's usually somebody who's very ambivalent or resentful about being there to begin with. If I ask someone, what brings you to therapy? And they say, my wife, it's okay. So what brings you to therapy? My wife. If we go around that a few times, then it's going to be difficult, or at least the first challenge will be to try and engage this person in therapy. Is this going to be something they're willing and able to invest in, or not? I know if I see somebody show up with, remember those plastic inserts they put in the pocket, in your pocket?
Oh, yeah.
You put your pens across.
Yeah, pocket protector.
Yeah. If I see one of those on somebody, I know I'm in for a long haul because they're probably an engineer, and we're going to talk about that doesn't make sense. But it's a feeling. It doesn't make sense. Why don't you just? It's all intellectual in the sense of wanting to solve problems without changing anything. Change the outside, I should say, rather than changing the inside. and that makes it difficult. When it comes to trauma, even though there's a lot of affect and there can be a lot of turmoil, conflict, all of that, I find that much more alive. I'm much more engaged there. There's more person there than there is with silence. Somebody can give me yes or no answers. That's not going to lead to anything other than a superficial experience.
Well, why would somebody engage? This is where kind of how my mind works. Like, why would somebody dedicate the time and the financial commitment to seeing a therapist, especially a therapist of your stature, and not take advantage of the opportunity to get the most out of it?
Some people come to therapy in order to defeat the therapist.
Interesting.
That there isn't the, well, let me put it this way, that by defeating the therapist, you can confirm that the issue is somewhere else rather than on oneself. So it can be a continuation of some kind of narcissistic self-importance that even the best therapist, I defeated, so to speak. Or it can be a further indication of victimization, that I'm not helpful, I'm not being helped because the field is so bad off. It's forever failing me. I had a patient one time that I think the session lasted about 20 minutes because she was convinced that I didn't understand her, that I was just going to prescribe medication for her, even though I don't prescribe medication, and that I was going to fleece her because she had seen a number of therapists before by her report that weren't helpful. I don't think any therapist would have been helpful to her. She asked me for a referral after telling me that she couldn't work with me because the color of my office was off and that I was insensitive. But she still asked me for a referral, and I said, I can't give you one. In good conscience, I can't give you one because you're nowhere near ready to be in therapy. And with that, she stood up, yelled at me that I was an evil person, slammed the door on her way out. Now, that's the most dramatic, but she came to therapy not to understand or to change, but to document, again, one more person that failed her.
My next question is a little tongue-in-cheek. Have you ever been defeated by a narcissist?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's, I've had some difficult situations.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking in terms of somebody just cutting off therapy. I was thinking, has anybody ever truly stumped you to where their logic couldn't be defeated? I didn't mean to make light of what you're about to talk about.
Are there people that I haven't been able to help? Yes. That despite my best efforts, I've not been able to reach certain people. Yes. And it's not the contest of winning as much as it is, I just couldn't get in. No matter what I tried, didn't seem to have much impact on someone. Refer them to another therapist, perhaps they would have a better success rate than I would. Always that possibility.
Well, aside from somebody wanting to match wits with you and quote unquote win, what other reason would somebody show up to therapy but not engage or not try to get the most out of it?
They may show up to try and get back at someone else. An adolescent, for example, comes to therapy and does not really want help directly, they're more interested in trying to get a parent in therapy, for example. So they'll create issues to try and bring the parent into sessions. That would be one example.
So people engage with you. They're willing to spend their time and their money, but they often have ulterior motives.
Yeah. Well, yes, and the whole issue of money is interesting. The issue of money can be really a resistance itself. Remember a number of years ago, a woman talking to me about she really couldn't continue in therapy. This was a new patient because it was too expensive. My fees were too high. When I refused to reduce them, she left therapy, and on the day she left therapy, I saw her getting into her car, which was a brand new Saab convertible. And I thought, you want me to pay for your car, is what it amounts to. That she didn't come to therapy to really get treatment. She wanted a bargain that I think, I don't know what it was, or narcissism, a sense of loss, but there was no real engagement on her part. It was, of what can you do for me? You should do it as cheaply as possible.
Would you care to talk about the types of professions that you typically see in your practice?
I see a number of physicians, a number of attorneys. I also see a number of younger adults in, early 20s, which I really enjoy because I think that's going to be the next area I really focus on. So many of these young people, particularly young men, are lost. I think therapy can be particularly helpful for them.
In what ways do you find that they're lost?
There isn't a clear sense of what it means to be male anymore. There's a question about how aggressive they can be, how sensitive they're expected to be, where they draw the line on certain issues, what no means in a relationship, what kind of work might they be doing if it's not like a family business or something they slide over to, but trying to make some career decisions. And then additionally, it's, forget what the percentages are, but the rate of suicide by young males is so much greater than it is for females. But across the board, so is education. Fewer white males graduate from college than females. So it's, a lot of guys know how to really be male anymore. So they get this whole bro culture that's established, which is basically echoing the thoughts and feelings of others, but there isn't really an independent sense. It's more of a group mentality than individual.
What do you attribute that to in society over the last decade, 2 decades? Does it go back farther than that?
Yeah. Well, it goes back, I think, at least probably early 70s and into the 80s and so on through. But I think that it's gotten particularly dramatic in the last, say, 10, 15 years. The cultural influences, you've got a very conservative right leaning government that I think is all about defining males in very traditional roles, which is very different than what's been happening since the 1960s. And I think that that's a real clash. So, what are we? Are we sensitive? Are we, the Marlboro men category?
Do you think the perpetuation of single motherhood has had an effect on that?
Probably. I think being a single mother is immensely challenging. And I think For boys, it can be confusing, which is why it's important to have an external support system. Uncles, male friends in the area, school teachers, coaches, ministers that help provide some structure and a sense of what it means to be a healthy male.
Yeah, I can certainly see that, and I've seen that just in the things that you see on the internet, and that's probably had a large effect on the cultural phenomenon. But there's been some pushback against that. You mentioned the latest administration, and the right-leaning nature of the Republican Party when they're in power. There does seem to be more of a shift, a societal shift that way. But I think you're seeing some pushback against that. Just from an identity standpoint, because our biology hasn't changed. But one thing that I did see, and maybe you can comment on this, I saw a statistic that today's young man has like a third the testosterone levels as his grandfather, and that probably has something to do with it too. One would think.
I would think so. I saw that statistic as well. I don't know what it means. I don't know what the implications of that are. I certainly hope it's not responded to with simplistic answers. Well, we'll just give more testosterone, rather than really looking at what is going on, that there was that drop, and what are the implications in our society for such an occurrence.
I think you can attribute it, and it's not my field, so it's really more speculation on my part, but I think you can attribute it to a couple of things directly. Our diet, processed foods, is probably having an adverse effect on testosterone levels, and I think that inactivity is also perpetuating that as well, because kids are content to play video games, and like it's how they socialize now. Like my 12-year-old will sit in the basement and he'll get on the phone with his friends, so he's still talking to people and he's playing Fortnite and all of the latest video games on the PlayStation, and his friends are doing the exact same thing, but they're not in their physical proximity. And I think that probably has a lot to do with it. And my sons are 12 and 15. I'm trying. It was a very interesting topic to me personally, because I want to make sure they don't fall into that trap. Going back to the loss of identity that you're seeing in young men, what are the long-term effects? What are they struggling with?
It's a sense of almost waiting for answers. There's a passivity. I don't know which direction to go, so I'm not going to go anywhere. Wait. Or what difference does it make what direction I go? It's not going to work out. I'm never going to have enough money to purchase a home. Prices are ridiculously high, so why even try? It's the why even try, or what good does it do, or it's never going to change, that I think is the most damaging.
How do you break that pattern?
To challenge it. How do you know what the future is going to be? They don't try, then it's guaranteed, probably, that those fears are going to come true. The only way they're going to know if there's any difference is if they give it a try and work with it. Now, they need some support. They need clarification. They need almost sponsorship at some points to really develop the skills that they have and to challenge the passivity.
Well, men need a purpose.
Yeah.
We need to build things. We got to build shit, even if it's just something simple. You build a deck or you build a fire. You've accomplished something. Something triggers in our brain, and it seems like society is hardwiring them out of it, or trying to hardwire them out of it, at least to some degree. And the passivity thing is something that I've seen in comments on the internet as well. It's it's almost like fatalism. It's like they've tried to accept their fate, but they are coming to you. So, I mean, by coming to you, they're making an effort. Something is telling them that this isn't right. What I'm feeling isn't right. And I just don't know how to deal with that.
Yeah, I think that if someone asks, what's in therapy, what's the answer? What do I do about this? I'll say, keep coming. I'll often get a sarcastic response. Yeah, so you can make more money. So I can support myself. Yes, but the major reasons, keep coming, keep talking about it. It's going to change. There is a process of the more you understand, the more you experience yourself as being different, the more you're responded to respectfully, the more that bolsters self-esteem and more likely to lead to change. A feeling changes a feeling. That's what happens. And that's what therapy does.
So much wisdom in this conversation.
I hope so.
Let's shift gears and talk about your most recent book with Dr. Klott. My understanding, and again, it's not my field, but it's my understanding that a book where, and I'll kind of give the synopsis of the book for the audience, that it's a patient, essentially your former patient, and you are discussing that therapeutic journey over the course of 20 years. And my understanding is that's never been done.
Right. And it's current.
Current meaning?
Current patient.
Oh, she's still a patient.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't realize that.
And has been for a number of years. She's also a very astute, experienced psychologist. So she has the language to speak from both sides of the couch. There's a question in there somewhere.
How did that come together?
Well, Rebecca's a writer, and she's written a few novels, and very good poet. One day, she asked me if I would ever consider writing with her, what the experience was like. And initially, I was very hesitant because it's not been done before, and I didn't want to compromise her treatment and all. But I said, let's give it a try. So she would send me what she had written, and then I would comment. And we found that it was going very well, very quickly. The book came together in no time. I think it has to do with both her maturity and her training knowledge. And I also think that the therapy made it possible, given the nature of the changes that she had made. It's not been done, but I think it's, well, your comments of it, you came in and you didn't expect it. It was very direct, very honest. There's plenty of books written about trauma from a diagnostic standpoint, or the patient did this or this kind of characteristics. There isn't one that has the interaction described of what therapy is really like for dealing with complex trauma.
Well, there's also no anonymity. You can talk about patients from the past in anonymity, and it's just anecdotal. I mean, you've got real people to it. The real people that were involved are attached to the story. And as the book was coming together, did she have problems processing old traumas? Was it triggering for her? What was that like for her? Do you think?
Well, it was talking through issues that were largely dealt with. In my comments about trauma earlier come into play here, that there was this residual of trauma that she experienced, and that got tapped into at times, but it wasn't nearly as overwhelming. The other issue that came up was our relationship. She could recall some of what I said over the years, but she didn't know why I said it. So in the book, as I described why I took a particular position or said what I said or didn't do what was expected by her, that was both illuminating and unsettling. But she gained from it, according to her report, and I see that as well.
Did you have to refer back to old notes?
No.
It's all from memory?
Yes.
Wow. That's very impressive.
Well, what I said was it's, I think, I don't remember specific things that I said, most things that I said. Some are highlighted, but I remember the tone, and I'm able to get close to it. And then once there, I can talk about what the feelings and thoughts that I had then and what I was writing about now may be similar, maybe different.
How's the book been received?
Don't know. It's one of those things, you send it out there and hope.
Sounds like a podcast.
Yeah. I think we've gotten good verbal feedback from people around here. We've got the blurbs for the book were very good and by some very experienced, well-known clinicians. We're waiting to see. I think in Amazon, there's only been one review, and it's been positive.
What are you hoping people get out of the book? I mean, it's primarily written for professionals, right? Psychotherapists.
Yeah.
But is there something that a layperson could get out of it?
Yes, that even in very severe situations, when there's been a history of trauma to the extent that Rebecca describes, that there's still hope, that therapy can be helpful, and that someone reading it hopefully will be moved by her story, but also to examine their lives. And if they're not living with fullness, sense of optimism about the future, then therapy might be something that they want to consider.
Very interesting. So you and I, we've had many conversations off camera about pharmaceuticals, and you're very much against that. But what's your perspective on psychedelics?
I have mixed thoughts about that. There was a film clip, maybe from the early 60s. It's in the film Being Cary Grant. Cary Grant experimented with LSD. And he did so in his office, in his therapist's office with the psychiatrist. And it was very helpful. It was used for him to open up and deepen the process. As an aside, it was Cary Grant that introduced Timothy Leary to LSD.
Oh, okay.
Which is an interesting connection there. So I think it can be useful in opening up the experiences from a different standpoint of creating, kind of tapping into this unconscious, unknown area that I think drugs can elicit. I have reservations because I recall the 70s, and I was a drug counselor just outside of New York. Well, first in the Bronx and then in the suburb. I had more than my fill of experiences in talking someone down from a bad acid trip. If under circumscribed conditions, then I think it can be useful. Just taking it and tramping in the woods for a couple hours, I'm not for that because there's too much that can go on. These are powerful drugs, and they affect one's ability to think. And you can get caught up in the middle of these hallucinogenic moments and really lose your bearings. I would certainly not encourage anybody to do it alone. And I've gone with one patient who had a ketamine session, and fortunately I was there because it was starting to go up. She was starting to agitate. I called the aide into the room and said, "You got to turn this down. the dosage is too high, she's going to really go into a bad place. And so he did, and the experience was good for her. Did it change anything? I don't know. She didn't either. She went back for 4 or 5, said it helped. I didn't see it. Someone else took some MDMA, and the change was like night and day. I mean, it was a very positive personality change in a very short period of time.
Yeah, I can see where your apprehension would come from as a counselor so many years ago, but I think this is a little bit different than street LSD, the MDMA and the ketamine that you described. Psilocybin, I think, is another one that is gaining prominence. And I think there are some pushes to get some studies done and get the drug classifications changed so that some studies can actually be done. LaVon talked about that when she was on. I don't know if you saw the episode with her or not, but she spoke about that at length. And so she's a strong believer in it. So, as you probably are aware.
Well, it's I take the position of I'm a believer after a while. That if I see the data and there's some clear indications that it's true, can be effective, then I'm for it. But I've seen too many promises that this is it. This is the miracle cure. My concern is that with psychedelics, we're looking at the same thing of let's rush, get it out there because potentially it's a good thing. Can be a good thing. And I'm aware that it's not the same as street LSD or ketamine, but by the same token, that's not what's being taken. Yes, in the clinics, it's the pure form, but people running around in the woods for a couple hours, that's not pharmaceutical approved. Those are street drugs. If it opens the experience in a useful way, we're always looking for fast solutions. We're always looking for the quick fix. And here we go again. We're not moving fast enough, so therefore, drugs will help us get there. It reminds me of a bumper sticker I once saw on a car. Immediate gratification is too slow. So often it's like, well, I'll try it because it's there. Can these drugs be useful with depression? I hope so. But I'm not convinced of it yet. I haven't seen the data to convince me of that. Can it be useful for self-exploration? Absolutely. But again, that needs to be very carefully monitored, and people need to be evaluated carefully for that.
Well, self-experimentation is always difficult. You could go on and on about that for sure. It kind of sounds like your perspective on psychedelics is similar to that of AI, that in the right environment, when controlled and monitored, it could be a positive thing. Yeah. But left unregulated and unchecked, and you leave people to their own devices, and there could be some seriously negative effects.
Well, I think one encouraging element with AI is that they're going to tighten up their safety protocols because since it's a self-perpetuating positive influence response that you get, you can trick it. And there's been a number of experiences, I'm sure you're aware of, where suicide's been the result, or someone's lost their life savings because they bet on a business that AI recommended. So I think those are issues that can be addressed. But once again, we're addressing it after the fact. We didn't have the safety protocols in place to begin with.
Well, rules and laws and regulations, they're always reactionary. Like nobody has any foresight anymore, it seems like.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So let's go back to the beginning of your career. because some of the audience is going to be young people, some men that are, and women that are more or less directionless, or just kind of lost. College is cost prohibitive to a lot of people and really unnecessary for a lot of occupations. And that is becoming less of the immediate first option as a result of that. But at the same time, a lot of young men are kind of taught one of two things: go to college or join the military. How did you get into psychotherapy as a profession? What attracted you to it? Was it something you knew you always wanted to do, even as a teenager?
I grew into it. That my father owned a law firm, and the expectation was that I'd become a lawyer. In fact, my father said to me, "I just want you to be happy in life. Whatever you want to do that will bring that happiness is what I encourage you to do. But you and I both know you're only going to be happy as a lawyer." So I had to say no before I could say yes. I started out being interested in education, and got as far as my student teaching and realized I didn't want to deal with 30 kids all at one time. That I realized that what I was particularly capable of was listening to people and being involved with them, particularly young people. And with that in mind, I headed off to Columbia and got my master's there. And it wasn't so much the schooling that I got that made the difference as it was the life experiences. When I was a senior in college, I set up an experimental school, which helped form my attitudes about education. When went to New York, it was the city that provided so many different experiences of people and places. Linda's aunt, my wife's aunt, took us under her wing and introduced us to people and places that we would not have ordinarily been able to see or experience. So that helped really shape where I was going. I started out dealing just with drug abuse. Heroin addicts. I worked with in the Bronx with heroin addicts. Worked in suburban schools. Same thing with drugs. And then expanded from there. Went to school, further school, got my doctorate, and realized that I could talk to adults as well as kids. So that's where I went. For me, it was important to follow what I felt my gifts were, and to pursue people and talking to them. I know a great many people in my field, probably more than any psychologist around here. The reason being is I ask. I'd call someone up and say, love the article. Can you send me a copy? I'm doing this book. Can I interview you on this? And what I found is most people enjoy talking about what they do. So it wasn't, how dare you call me? There was a delight in being able to have the opportunity to discuss their work. That was true when I was 30, and it's true now in my 70s. So I would encourage someone who's looking at a career in psychology, basically any real discipline, to talk to people in it and find out what it's about. Establish relationships with mentors that can really teach you the ins and the outs that have an investment in your progress. That was true for me, and I had some wonderful teachers along the way.
Any you'd care to mention?
One was Tom Bratter. Over 30 years, he never signed a letter to me that didn't end with "in the struggle together." And he was the real deal. He would really involve himself with others. Thought the establishment, came from a very traditional background, but was really a tremendous influence in my life. Another would be Ernest Wolf, who was my last analyst that I talked to when I was going through a very difficult period in my life, and his calm, knowledgeable presence made a major difference to me.
Yeah, well, it's always good to make note of the people that have shaped your life, even if they're not household names. It's important that people hear those names and understand that they had such a profound influence over a person who's had profound influences over other people, and the people that you've inspired it'll go down the list, and people will remember the name Richard Raubolt. So, and that's got to be very gratifying.
Well, as long as I remember it positively.
Excellent. Well, on that note, I really do appreciate you taking the time to come on, and you found it as enjoyable as I did. You tell the audience where they can find you, what you're all about. You want to talk about your next book that comes out in May. The floor is yours.
Well, I appreciate your having me on. I enjoyed talking about therapy. I didn't know what kinds of questions you would ask.
Neither did I.
And you didn't ask what I thought you would. So
well, now I got to know.
I couldn't have prepared for it anyway. If somebody's interested in talking with me, they can contact me through my website, www.richardraubolt.com, and be glad to do that.
Hey, what's up? Thanks for checking out my content. If you like this kind of stuff, hey, please do me a favor, like, subscribe, follow, hey, whatever platform you happen to be on. It really helps us out with the algorithms. Thanks. See you on the next video. Now I got to know, what did you think I was going to ask?
I don't know. I didn't expect that you would ask as much about AI and pharmaceuticals. I thought it would be more general questions. It's fine. It's good.
Yeah, I always start with a list, and I send it ahead of time so you can kind of have an idea. But it's very conversational. You kind of never know what, where the direction is going to lead, and it's much more organic that way.
Right.
And I think it makes for much more compelling, and it's certainly more enjoyable for me.